sum that we're multiplying? 100. Okay? And so we're going to multiply it by 1.05 times 1.04 times 1.03. And that gives you how much $100 3 years ago is worth today. Some dollars. You guys can do the math. There's another way of asking this question. How much is $100 today? How much would it have been worth 3 years ago? Knowing what we know about how to find future value, can somebody help me find past value? This is an extension. Yes, good. What would I divide by?
1.05. Well, you start off on the other side, necessarily, with 3%. No?
So I well, actually, it doesn't matter, right? Because it's the transitive property multiplied.
Associative.
Yeah. What's that?
Associative.
Associative. Thank you. Yeah. Associative. Yeah. So 1.05 times 1.04 times 1.03. And is this number going to be bigger than or less than 100? Who votes less than?
Discount.
Who votes bigger than? First one. Yes, less than is right. It's a discount rate. This is a discount factor. This is a compounding factor because it compounds and gets bigger. This is a discount factor because you're discounting it to make it smaller. So if we had 3 different interest rates by which we would discount it, we do it this way. In finance, we typically see problems that we use the same discount rate. And that's why to discount any sum, we do 1 plus r to the number of periods. So in this case, it would have been 3. But in this case, it would have been 1 particular r. Okay? So, do we have any questions so far? This is just basically all math, very little finance here.
So the top is wrong.
They're all right and wrong. I just answered different questions. So the top was how you answered the first question.
Okay.
Here I presented an extension. If I were to ask you instead to discount it back.
All right.
Make sense?
Makes sense.
Cool. One thing, the teacher's never wrong. That doesn't apply in this class, obviously. Okay, so we are through with question number 1. Question number 2 got a little trickier. I did not mean to throw people off with the word periodic, and that is why I bolded and highlighted it so people didn't forget that you had to account for the fact that it was a periodic interest rate and not an annual interest rate. So compounding has to take place periodically and not annually. And compounding is what we did right there by multiplying it times 1 plus whatever. Okay? So in this case, we'll put our timeline up here. This is going to be year 3 for n equals 6. This is going to be year 0, 0. N is the number of periods. You can also use T. I don't care about notation.
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
Since you just mentioned the whole periodic thing, so what you wanted us to do, the intent was 3% of 6 months rather than 3% of the year?
No, it's not 3% at 6 months. So it's an annual rate, just like our bond coupon rates, right?
Be 1.5%.
I don't know.
I just, well, yeah, I did. I was just
Then yeah.
wondering because when you said
That's why you're asking
periodic,
it.
well, when you said periodic, you threw
You
me
give me
off.
back
I was like, I was about to say, hey, you could keep the other points. But
No, you did it. You did it the right way, and that is the way to do it. You have 1, 2, 3. Not bad. 4, 5. It looks like it worked out. Okay. So this is our number of periods. So I'm going to erase these 3 and 0 because that confused. Well, 0 is not. Okay. So this is how you draw a timeline. I didn't mean to blow your minds here. So how do we populate it? Okay. As you guys all found out about TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, how do we come up with a coupon payment on TIPS?
The inflation adjustment,
Yes. What do we adjust by inflation?
the,
Present value.
or no,
Face value, yep. So a normal coupon, you just take your face value and you multiply it by the coupon rate, and you get your coupon that you get every year, right? In a treasury inflation protected security, it's almost like that, but you get the same coupon rate every year, but you have to adjust the face value that you're multiplying by the rate of inflation, okay?
Uh-oh.
She's saying, oh, because she got 2 right. So we were still using the same rates of inflation as last problem. And so we had inflation at, yeah, it was at 5% last year or the first year? I forget. First year. So inflation year 1.
5, 4, 3.
So over here it's going to be 5%. There it's going to be 4%. Tiny numbers, sorry. There it's going to be 3%. Okay? Yeah, that's sorry guys. Okay, I gave you a hint, which I was confused writing this hint. I could not think of a less confusing way of wording it. I'm sorry if you were confused reading it, which brings me to the next point. If you're ever confused reading anything I write, please ask me. I have an email. You know where my office is? But anyway, so
I don't either. Where's it at?
it's there. You can see it.
Right
You
there?
can throw something at it, but I ask that you don't. Okay. So, yes, so this asks us to remember what we learned in the last problem, right? If we had $1 in time 0, how much would it be worth at time 2? It would be worth $1.05. We started out instead not with $1, but with $1,000. So let's formalize this at a table here, right? T equals, I'm going to call this the adjusted face value, and we get coupon payment.
So question, the coupon payment does not go by the original face value of 1,000?
In a treasury inflated protection security, it does not. Which is the
So it
only
goes
way you
by
could have
the-
answered your question correctly.
Let's not talk about points here, we already got my points. Let's just talk about how to do it.
Yes.
In that instance, then, when it comes to tips, it's just basically based off the face value of that time, or the period that you're gonna get the coupon.
Yes, but the thing is, the actual face value of the instrument does not change. That's a little confusing, but what I mean is that at the end of your investment horizon, the federal government only pays you $1,000 back per bond. Okay? So the true face value doesn't change, but you use an adjusted face value to calculate the coupon payment.
Only the coupon.
Only the coupon
So
payment.
you're, okay, so that's actually what's showing up. and
That's
the
how
face
they're
value.
protecting you
All right.
against inflation.
Let's not look at the fact that you did not go over these answers.
Should do the same thing on mine.
So we'll deal with it later. So yeah, I guess I was looking more at these. No, I'm pretty sure Fabian, you got these right. You got the coupon payments right. I probably did.
$15 for constantly. I got the face value right.
Why did it completely different?
I got the face value right, which is.
Oh, that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, you see.
Oh man.
Yeah, you already gave me 2 points, get out of
All
here.
right. 1 point off. I haven't entered the grades yet. Don't worry. Okay, so T
It was
equals
finalized, okay.
0, 1, 2,
It's not
3,
right.
4, 5, 6. I don't really care about points, kids. Okay. So at time 0, the face value
And
is
what's this?
1,000 because inflation hasn't hit yet. And there's no coupon at time 0, okay? At time 1, what's going to be my adjusted face value? 1,000. What's that? 1,025, yep. And does everyone see why? Because at time 2, which is a year out, it's going to be $1.05. So what I meant to do with the hint is just to tell you that time 1 is going to be half of that. Okay? Do I see any confused people? Yes. Okay. So
like really screwed up.
that's okay. I'm sure you're not alone. I think a couple other people I really screwed up this one. But okay. So what?
I said I screwed up so much on this.
Oh, okay.
Nothing
It
about
happens.
this.
You're in good company. So
I got it right.
here's
It wasn't periodic, it would have been semi-okay.
here's the concept. Okay, the concept is what you did in the
Right.
last question. If you started with last question, I was talking about $100. Here, I'm just change it to talk about $1,000. If you have $1,000 today, and you have an inflation rate of 5% over the next year, then that $1,000 today is going to be worth what $1,050 1 year from now is worth. That means today you could buy X amount of goods for $1,000, whereas a year from now you'd have to pay $1,050.
So
Okay?
why wouldn't that one, it be what, 102 point,
$1,250.
yeah,
I'm sorry, 1,250. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it would. And that's
Okay.
what your adjusted face value would be.
I guess I'm confused. 'cause-
So, okay, and maybe it'll be clear.
Oh, okay, all right, there it
Yep,
goes, yeah.
This is
All right, that
year
makes sense
one,
now.
This is year 2, and this is year 3, okay?
There,
You gotta remember, there's 2 periods within a year.
Yeah, I didn't do the semi-annual.
Yep, and that tripped people over, that's okay. So, that's why I tried to put periodic to give you a hint. But, okay, but here's the important part. In year 4, it's not gonna be, let's say at t equals 4, it's not going to be 1,040, because we need to take into account that our money has already devalued. So what we need to multiply by 1.04 is not the original $1,000, it's this new value that we got at the end of year 1. At the end of year 0, we're getting to year 1, whatever. That's how you look at it, okay? So what I mean is to get from year 0 to year 1, we say 1,000 times 1.05 equals 1050. To get from year 1 to year 2, we say 1050 times 1.04 equals, I think 1092. Stop me if I'm wrong, anyone?
Yeah.
Okay? Does this make sense to people? Because this is how money works. We need to take into account the fact that money has already devalued over the last year when we're figuring out what it'll be worth next year, for instance. Okay? Is there anyone who's not clear on it? Okay, so again, we see that it got up to 1092 in year 4. So basically it increases $42, and the hint confusingly told you to assume that that increase is constant. So at this 6 months, it's going to be 1071, which is $21 plus $21, which is $42. Okay? Finally, you guys get the process. Last one's going to come out to be 0.5 and 1125 rounded. Okay? So to get from these adjusted face values to our coupon payments, we multiply by 0.03. Because the coupon rate never changes. It's just the adjusted face value that changes, basically. What you're multiplying by that changes, okay? So we can do these multiplications and come out with 15,375, 1575, 1607, 1638, 1663, and 1688. Got something?
So we can adjust the coupon rate on the inflation rate?
You can equivalently do this by adjusting the coupon rate by the inflation rate. That would give you the same coupon payments. However, how Treasury securities are calculated, well, actually, that's a misstatement. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. The way the book teaches it is to get to the coupon payments, you do this. But mechanically, it's going to work the exact same way. So you guys remember it whichever way you want to remember it. I should have probably thought of that first, but good job. Alternatively, if you want to get these coupon payments, you can do, so to get the coupon payment that you would pay 1 year out, you would take 3%, times 1.05. And that would
That's what
be-
I was wondering, like, why wouldn't you just take that out in the beginning?
You can. You can. Sorry, I let you down. This is how the book teaches it, so I decided to regurgitate it. Mechanically, it works the same way. So this is coupon at year one.
Because it's kind of like a risk factor associated with the bond, so to find your,
3% times, what would I multiply it by to get my coupon payment at year?
so, yeah, on the year that you're getting 3% and your inflation's 3% with it, you know.
Yeah, I guess it can get a little confusing, but.
Yeah.
So this here is inflation, this here is coupon. Okay? So what would I get to get my coupon payment 6 months out? Not a year from now, but 6 months out. What would I multiply 3% by? Yes.
Okay.
Now, I'm sorry, I should have put this guy above here. This is turning into a football chalk talk.
What happened now?
Anyway,
So 3 went left?
so your coupon at n equals 1 and coupon at n equals 2, okay? Coupon at n equals 1 is 3% times 1.025.
And you multiply
Coupon
that
at,
by 1,000?
Yes, multiplied by 1,000,
I
yep.
keep getting 3075.
So, this, no, I think it should be 0.025.
No, I mean, like, for each period though, shouldn't it be half of 3%?
Yeah, so that year that inflation's 3% and your rate of return is 3%,
3% per year.
would you basically be making
Oh.
nothing?
And each period?
Yes, that's it.
That's what the calculations are on.
Okay. Well, it's easier not to adjust the coupon, sorry.
Yep.
So 1.5%, but yeah, 1.5%. I'm just gonna make another note and then I'll move on here. If I wanted to figure out my coupon payment at time 3, I would do 1.5% times 1.05, because that's already what it starts out as. And then that times 1.02, because that's inflation next year. Perhaps a more confusing, perhaps a less confusing way, you guys can be the judge, is just to do it this way. Multiply one thing to face value. Taylor?
So at n equals 6, you'd also get the cash flow of 1,000, but you just get the 1,000, not the adjusted.
Yes, at n equals 6, you get plus 1,000, yes. So it would be 1,016.88. I guess these are the coupons, so we had another column that says cash flows. This would be all the same, except this says 10, 16, 88.
Wait, so how did you get the 15.375, the year one coupon?
Okay, so this isn't year one, it's confusing, this
Well,
is
yeah,
time period.
it's
Yep.
6 months, yeah.
Okay,
Would
so
the first one be negative?
nothing should be negative. What?
Well, if you're putting cash flows and you're saying 0.
Oh, yeah. So at t equals 0, it should be negative, but we don't know what we paid for this bond. So, to be technically, you're right. Okay, so how did I get this?
I get that, I mean.
Oh, sorry.
Just the coupon part, because I got it at like 15 times 1.05.
So, point, okay, let's see.
Or I got 15 times 1.025, that's how I got that. Is that like actually how you do it?
Yes, so the way to get this number is to take this adjusted face value and multiply it by the coupon rate that you pay, the periodic coupon rate, so 0.015.
Okay.
So this is, here, I know what's wrong. 0.015. Probably was turning out more confusing than that, sorry. Okay, so from the top, let me walk you through, all right?
Jesus.
You have 6 periodic coupon payments and a face value, okay, that we're gonna tack on at the end. How to get the coupon payments? You have to take the initial face value, and every year you have to account for the annual inflation. So in the first year, inflation was 5%. So the adjusted face value that you multiply by the periodic coupon rates in order to get the coupon payment at t equals 2 is going to be 1050, because that's 1,000 times 1.05. Okay? Take this in half to get what you'd multiply the periodic coupon rate at t equals 1. You do that to get your first coupon payment. Okay? You know how to do that because the hint told you that the inflation happens gradually. So right in the middle, it's going to be half the amount of inflation. Okay? You iterate this process for the rest of the years, taking into account the fact that you're no longer multiplying 1,000 by the inflation rate, you're multiplying the new value by the inflation rate. Okay? That's probably as concise as I could put that. I apologize for the confusion at various stages in this graph. Okay. Give me a minute to copy it down.
So to get the bottom number, I don't know, never mind.
You started the sentence, you gotta finish it.
I was just thinking, like, why wouldn't you do like 5% minus the 3% times it times 1.02
I didn't follow your numbers. Do you
to
wanna-
like deduct inflation?
Uh-huh.
The 5% would technically be, 2%.
So you're subtracting 3% from 5%? Can you provide me some intuition of why you're doing that?
Never mind. I'm just saying if you're accounting for inflation.
I think this way does account for inflation. Do you people think this way accounts for inflation?
Are you trying to say because the coupon rate is 3% and inflation's like 5%? You can, I don't think.
Oh, wait, did it say inflation? I thought inflation was 3%. And,
So the last period's inflation is 3%.
oh yeah, it's different. Never mind. Yep,
Okay.
never mind.
We're clear? As clear as we can get?
Yep.
I think for the second row,
You're talking about purchasing power.
I think there's a big
Like
difference.
the risk factor, just deduct that on the beginning so that you'd know what you'd get
So you're saying-
with inflation, you know what I mean? The bottom line.
Mhm.
How about real rates, real rate of return?
Yeah,
You have to do like the nominal minus the inflation.
yeah.
I don't think we're doing that right now.
You're right. So if we were to compound it
I
periodically,
forgot, that was the,
then
so
you would
5
use
minus
this number.
3.
But the hint in
So
the problem
technically you would
said
only be getting
to- or
2%
the
your-
suggestion
on
in the
your
problem
rate of
said that
return.
inflation
The
happens
first part is
gradually.
CN equals 1.
So it's not going to be this number of times.
Easy.
I'm just saying what you're gonna
1.025.
actually be getting
It's going to be
supposedly.
getting from here
So it was just
to here.
2 minus
Yes, and cut it in half. Does that make sense?
Right?
Okay.
And that's why I was saying,
Question
in this
two.
year where it's
Sorry.
3% and your
I
coupon.
think that has to do with prices too. We don't know what the prices are.
Okay.
How do I get here, okay? So I use the same method. So I take, okay, I'm gonna erase this here because who knows what this says, it's a mess.
The 3 was about to make a play to the left.
Okay, so how do we get this number? Can anyone help her out? Can anyone answer how we get that number? No, I'm sorry, 1071.
You take that 150, and you multiply it by the percentage going
wanted
to
to know
the
what
third payment, which
you would actually
it's 4% for the full year, so minus half is 2%.
Ah.
1%. No, 0.02.
I don't think that's gonna get us an answer.
I'm not doing.
Okay.
It's 150 times the inflation rate.
No,
There.
because there's
Yeah.
gonna be
They're
change
accounting
in
for
this.
inflation.
Okay?
Yeah.
So
With the
what we
face
need to
value.
do
Yeah.
is get to how much the money is gonna be worth a year from now. That says,
0.71.
I got that answer that way.
Don't be messing with me here. Hey, sit down, let me give me that marker.
it's all you. I don't want this problem anymore.
I'll be able to-
Okay, yeah, that's how you get there. But,
And then the next one, you just do. the
okay,
same
yes, okay. So, no, okay, you're right, but let me go over formally, because this might be confusing. Because, okay, look, That works, what you're saying works, Fabian, but to get from here to here, it doesn't work.
It's still the same thing.
No.
Well, you take that 0.7.
If you multiply this by 1.02, it does not get it, it's gonna give you some change.
42 cents on it.
Yeah, you get some change, okay? 1.0, okay, so to get from here to here, you do 1.04, and then you divide it in half. So I'll get there in a minute. Taylor, first,
I thought you
Real
were-
question, will this be on the exam?
some version of understanding how to calculate Treasury inflated protection securities might be on the exam. Let's make sure we understand. Okay, let's go over. Well,
Forget the rest of the stuff.
yeah.
Let's go back.
Let's make sure we understand this real well. Okay. So from the top.
So you don't want any cents in there. I thought you just rounded.
I did round for the last one, but for the first two, we didn't have to round.
Wait,
For the
can
first
we-
four, you didn't have to round.
Can we do like a different example with like different numbers?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Okay, so we're still gonna start out.
Oh, ouch,
All right, give me some inflation numbers. 8% inflation for the first two periods and 7% inflation for the next period. Okay. So. 8%.
Like 876, why not?
I forgot what I said. We'll go with 6.
I
Okay?
guess it just didn't seem like you were making anything on that year if you were 3% and inflation was 3%.
So,
Be like 0.
what's our coupon payment?
5%.
5%. Okay.
Let's go with that.
So, what we have in the question prompt is that inflation happens gradually over this year, okay? So, let's see what we actually have in the question prompt. That's what I meant.
3, 4.
Okay, assume inflation happens continuously within a year at the rate specified above. Okay, so I didn't teach this to you guys, but if you wanted to do continuous compounding, what you do is e to the RT, okay? And so, PERT, e to the RT. You won't be responsible for this, but if you ever want to know what a interest rate is continuously compounded, so what the rate that your bank actually pays you is continuous compounding. So at any given point, if you want to know how much money is in your account, it's going to be the P. At any given point, what's in your account is what you started with times E, which is this.
Expected.
No, it's not the expectation operator. It's the opposite of the natural logarithms, the magic number. Yeah, it's just called E. I don't think it has a name. To the rate times time, okay? We don't need to do this. I tried to simplify the problem for you guys. This is continuous compounding. What I wanted you to assume instead is that if $100 1 year ago would be worth $108 today, then it would be worth $104 6 months ago. Okay? That's what I meant with the hint. If I confused everyone, I'm sorry. But this is how we get these numbers. Okay? So with that in mind, we know it's going to be worth, so the first year is easy. We know it's going to be worth $1,080, okay? And we know period 1 is going to be worth $1,040. Did anyone not follow me thus far? You said no?
Oh, no,
You did wrong. Okay, cool.
So just mechanically speaking, it's better to skip the second period or the full year and then divide backwards?
If you were trying to memorize, no, in fact, that's the only way of doing it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you had the future value equals P equals RT, you don't have to do that, but that's continuous compounding. In this scenario, this is the only way
It's
to
this
come up.
specific mechanic.
Yeah, it's the only way to come up with how much. Taylor.
From 1 to 2, could you not just do 1,000 times 1.04 and then do that 1040 times?
Yes. So that's exactly what it comes
Or
up. If
plus.
you do 1040 times 1.04, you will not get this number. You will get this number and some change. You can validate it. That's what happens if you do periodic compounding. Okay. Continuous compounding is that PERT, this is periodic compounding, it compounds every period. In the question, you had 3 different inflation rates, different inflation rate every year, but over the year it's constant. Okay, so we're on the same page so far. Now to get from 1080 to the next step.
Which is the next year or so.
Uh,
Just the full year, right?
Yes, so that would be the easiest way I would do it. So let's just do that. Let me teach you guys one method of doing it, okay? So from 1080 to the next year, year 2, you do 1080 times, again, 1.08. Can somebody give me that number?
1166.40.
1166.40, okay? To figure out what that is 3 periods from now instead of 4 periods from now, you just, take the average of these 2. So it's going to be 11, 23, 20. Okay? Now, it's important again to point out that to get from here to here, you could not have just multiplied this times 1.04. But to get from here to here, you could have just multiplied this by 1.04.
Okay.
That's just a strange thing about math in this problem, okay? But as Jackson pointed out, if you want to consistently get all of them using just one algorithm, then multiply it, figure out what it's worth every year, okay? So, how do we get to figure out what period 5's payment is? Someone give me the steps. There's multiple.
Multiply 1166 times 1.06.
And that will give me what?
That will give you your 6th period of payment,
Excellent.
which is 1236.38. And then take your average of your year, or your period 6 and period 4 payment, and that gives you your period 5.
And
Which is
for a number, anyone's got it.
But you could go,
Don't give me goods.
1201.39.
1201.39. I'm hoping to just give you guys one way of doing it. If you want to propose several ways of doing it, that's on you. But
no, I'm just saying, like, you took half of that, why wouldn't you times it times half of
say that one more time.
that? Never mind.
So you have to add these together and take half of it. You can't just take half of this because that gives you 600 something.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it.
That's
But
okay.
For the purpose of being concise, let's just stick with this so far, okay? Okay. I swear to you guys, this problem is an easy one. We just made it very hard. Okay, so the coupon payments, we multiply all of these numbers by our coupon rate. 1.05, but we have to do it periodically, so 1.025. Okay? That'll give you guys the right numbers. I prefer not to spend class time plugging these numbers into the calculator because this is something that's pretty easily verifiable. But if you guys want, we can. So, do I have your permission to skip figuring out these numbers? which
So
is-
all those numbers you times 1.025.
That's it. That's exactly it. Yep. Okay. So, now we can get the coupon payments, and as one of you wisely pointed out, Bobby shaking his head.
Well, because you're telling me that I couldn't do it the other way, that I did it beforehand, but I keep checking myself on, like, so, for example, number 5, all I had to do was multiply number 4 by 1.03.
That's how I would do it.
And I got
Yeah.
exactly the same answer.
I don't think I think it's
Yes,
not
yes.
4 to 5, it's
It's
5 to 6.
5 to 6 you won't be able to get.
It's always from the,
5 to 6, you do 4 times 1.06.
Yes, you do 4 times 1.06. You can't do 5 times 1.03. That won't work. Okay, so
gotcha.
Okay. Just the middle one.
this is just math and this particular question set. It's not worth memorizing, but try to understand how to hit the problems. Okay, so have we killed this problem?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I will try to be less confusing when I ask a problem like this, if I ask a problem like this. Okay, I'm not going over the wordy ones, Sally Mae, Freddie Mac, and what things you take into account when calling bonds, because if you read the textbook, you'll get these two. Okay, the last question. There are at least two ways of doing this question. I did it the hard way. When one of you came into office hours, I showed you how to do it the hard way. When I read one of your homeworks, you guys did it the easy way, and so I can introduce that way to you. So I can introduce both of them to you, or I can introduce one of them to you.
Easy way.
Easy way.
I always take the easy way out.
Okay, two. All right, so I saw a few twos, so I'll just go over twos, okay? Sorry. So we'll take a shortcut here and say that basically we're trying to decide between two projects, okay? So project one is no refi. Project two is refi. And refi, as you guys probably understand, equals call and reissue. Okay? If we do not refinance, let's figure out what investors would pay for this bond with its current cash flows today. Okay? So there are how many cash flows left in this bond? What's that? 7 years? 14 cash flows. So the number of periods is 14. Okay? We're trying to figure out what investors would pay. So, refi.
Okay.
Refinance. We're trying to figure out what investors would pay, so this is what we're looking for. Okay? The future value of this bond is going to be it's going to be 1,000. Okay? So we're a company. No, we're trying to figure out what investors would pay. So from the investor's perspective, this future value is going to be an inflow. It's going to be positive. Okay? What are our periodic coupon payments?
$25.
Okay, so payment equals 25. Okay? What is the required rate of return on our company today? 3%. What's that? Yeah, it is 3%. But it's not going to be the 5% that the rates were when they started out. It's going to be the 3%. Well, the 5% was just for a coupon rate. We don't even know what the required rate of return is at issuance. But we know that today's required rate of return, today's I over Y, is 3% annually, so periodically it's 1.5%. Okay. Now it's as simple as plugging numbers into your calculator. So I think if we do, we get this number. Investors are willing to pay $11.25 and 43 in order to get this stream of cash flows when they perceive this much risk in our company. Okay? Here it takes a little bit of logic and reasoning and argument. If this is what investors are willing to pay, then, let me start that sentence over. If it were a perfectly fairly priced instrument, and we are paying them exactly as much periodic interest as they demand, the two are equatable, what would investors be willing to pay for $1,000 in the future, given the exact amount, what's that?
Sorry.
Given the exact amount in coupon payments that they would require from us? Which is? No. If we were giving them exactly what they required, investors would be willing to pay $1,000 today for the promise of $1,000 in the future if we were to give them exactly what they required in between. So if the required rate of return was 5%, and periodically it would be 2.5%, then the security would trade at par. At par means the future value and the present value are both $1,000, and that happens again only when the I over Y equals the coupon rate. Okay? This number is interpreted as the amount which investors require periodically. Okay? This number is what we actually pay investors. If the two are identical, these two are identical. Because investors require this much, and we're paying them more, then investors would be willing to pay more for this bond. That's why this number's absolute value is higher than that number. Are we all clear on that? This is the inverse relationship between yields and prices.
And you're saying we didn't know the required rate of return?
We didn't need to know the required rate of return before.
Okay.
Of the original instrument. This is what the required rate of return is now, in today's market. You follow?
Yeah, new market rate, 3%, used to be 5%.
It didn't necessarily used to be 5%. If the security were issued at par, it could have been 5%. But I didn't give you a, did I give you? What
It just said 10-year bond with a 5% coupon rate.
Yeah, 5% coupon rate. So that's how we get payment. That's not the I over Y.
Okay.
Okay, so here's where it takes a little bit of reasoning and argument. The difference between a perfectly fairly priced security and what investors are actually paying for it is going to be the premium. This number represents the amount of value that investors get by buying this security. Okay? So if I would give an investor $1,000 for this security, I would get $1,250 of value out of it. I would get $125 of value out of it. So if Crystal had this bond right now, and we wrote a contract a year ago for me to buy this bond from her for $1,000, she would reluctantly give it up to me. I would take the bond, and I could sell it on the market for $1,125, because that's what it's actually worth. So that means in that transaction, I have appropriated $125 worth of value. Did we follow that or no? Did anybody not follow that? Fabian did not follow that?
No, I follow.
You followed it, okay. So if the investors perceive $125 worth of value, that means this is what you as a company are foregoing by continuing to pay the coupon rate that you're paying. You are basically losing $125 net present value wise to do this, okay? So the benefit of refinancing would be $125, 43 cents. Okay? We don't have to look at anything here except for one number, the cost of refinance. If we issue a security at par, that means it's a perfectly fair value security. We don't get any net benefit, and investors don't get any net benefit. Okay? But if we refinance, we have to incur a call penalty of 3 years worth of interest at $50 a year equals $150. So as we can see, the costs outweigh the benefits. And so we would not execute this call and reissue. Now, you'll notice that this is the net present value of the benefit. And this is the net present value of the cost. And I'm going to ask you to remember that as I take it into the next way of doing this problem. Okay? May I erase this stuff? You can get the right answer to this problem, and many of you did, without considering the net present value, without considering discount rates or anything. Because the timing of the cash flows is very easy to keep track of. Cash flows come at the same time. If I don't refinance, I have 14 cash flows in front of me. They are as follows. 1, all the way to 14. And they are 25, 25, continuously to 1,025. Okay? These would be all my cash flows. If I do refinance, I have a different set of cash flows. I have 15, 15, all the way to 1,015. Okay? So I can't compare this cash flow with this one because they occur at different times, and I would have to take the net present value of it. But I can compare this cash flow with this one because they occur at the same time. And every time that this is occurring, this cash flow is going to be $10 less than this one. Because we're summing each of these cash flows, you can basically just take the sum in both columns, okay? So the net outflow for us, I'm sorry, these are all outflows because we're a company here. Net outflow for us is going to be 14 times 25, which is 350. Plus $1,000 that we'll return. The net outflow here is going to be 14 times 15, which is 210. Plus 1,000. But we also have to take into account that we pay $150 today. All right? So minus 150. That gives us negative 1360. Okay? So with this option we lose 1360. With this option we lose 1350. So this option we're better off. We've lost less amount of money. If it were the case that these cash flows, one was 17, one was 22, one was 46, here one was 23, one was 64, okay? We could not use this method because these cash flows are not comparable. It's difficult to explain to you, and so I ask that you try to remember the previous method because that's the general case that you will be able to apply to any problem. This case happens to work for this problem, and so I could not deduct credit for the folks who employed it. But the general case would be reasoning that what investors are willing to pay in excess of par represents the premium for investors. A premium for investors represents a foregone premium for the company or a loss for the company. And so that is the cost for the company, and we calculate that's the benefit for the company if it refinances, and the 150 would be the cost. And that's in net present value, that's in today's terms. These numbers are not interpretable. This $25 doesn't mean $25, it means some number necessarily less than $25. Okay. I am starting to hate homework as much as I'm sure you guys do. But unfortunately, it's one of the easiest ways of communicating. Okay. Now, onward with our lecture that I was hoping to start 45 minutes ago. That's 30 minutes ago. Okay, so let's go over a couple problems. We won't get time to do this stuff. All right, so 1 second here. A lot of papers.
What are stocks going on today?
What's that?
Is this the end of stocks?
This is the end of stocks. If I get really ambitious, I might try to squeeze dividend stuff into next period, but we'll see. We'll leave it off for now. Okay, so this is the end of chapter 13 unless otherwise stated. So chapter 13 talks about a couple of dividend valuation models, and so that's what we'll talk about today. So this is a way of valuing a company based on the dividends that it pays. And so we talked about last class, there is Exactly 3 ways of extracting value from an asset, using it, holding on to it, or selling it. And so we talked about that in the case of stocks, the value that you get from holding on to it comes strictly from the dividends that you get while you're holding on to the stock, because that stock certificate entitles you to dividend payments. So let's take the general case where we're holding on to a stock. So holding period equals n periods, okay? We have a dividend amount that's constant, so constant dividend of D dollars, and our required rate of return, so for this company is RE, represents equity, and we expect to sell it at or no, for this first general case, we will sell it at P dollars. And we will sell it at P dollars at time N, okay? So, just like any other cash flow, we value this one the same way, any other asset. The value of an asset is the net present value of all its future cash flows. So in this case, we have N future cash flows, assuming that the stock pays dividends periodically without skipping a dividend. So this is the simplest case. So, so the value at time 0 equals the dividend at time 1 divided by 1 plus RE to the 1 plus the dividend at time 2, and it's going to be the same dividend, so I don't need the time subscripts, times 1 plus RE squared plus the same dividend in period 3 all the way out to period N, where again we get that same dividend payment, but it's N periods hence, so we have to discount it by N periods. Yes, Taylor?
Wouldn't the third one be to the third?
Yes, it would. Sorry. Good catch. Good catch. Yep, sorry about that. So, to the 3. So that's good. You guys are getting the intuition here. Plus our final sales price, which we're also going to have to discount back to today's dollars. Okay. So all we're doing here is the long way taking a net present value of each particular cash flow. Once we take the net present value, we sum them all together. Okay? This is just like the bond problems that we had, except these D's were C's for coupon. The RE was RD for the required rate of return on debt. And the PN was the FV, face value. Okay? In the bond problems, we restricted face value to almost always be 1,000. In the stock problems, it's going to fluctuate because it's the stock price. In the bond problems, we restricted the coupon payment to stay at a flat amount until we talked about the tip securities when the coupon payments were adjusted. Okay? But in general, we worked with fixed coupon payments. So far, these dividends are also fixed, but that's going to change very soon. Okay? I want to express a more convenient way of writing this. It's the summation from t equals 1 to n of the dividend over 1 plus RE to the tth power. Okay, so what? Pardon?
Over here in static.
Oh, thanks. This is not my voice. So whatever this t is, this is like a do loop if you guys program. But whatever this t is, it's just going to iterate by 1 in the next period. So we start at t equals 1, we plug in t here. 4 periods from now, this is going to be t equals 4. We plug a 4 into here. It's all going to be the same. Let me introduce the first complication. What if these dividends were not fixed, but variable? Well, then we very simply have this dividend at time 1. This dividend is at time 2. This dividend is at time 3. This dividend is at time n. Okay? All these subscripts are doing is saying that, hey, this dividend need not be the same as this one. Does that make sense? Okay. So then, this convenient notation would be ET.
Where does that factor in the selling price? 1 second.
So oh yes, I forgot to put that. Thank you. So P n over 1 plus R e to the n. So the value at time 0 is going to be the sum of this dividend stream plus the selling price.
And that says D what? D.
T.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, because we're iterating by t here.
Time.
I don't know how people use different, sometimes S is in here, so confusing. But okay, so I'm going to forego doing a problem on this one. We're going to do a problem on the next, slightly more complicated one, okay? There is a special case here where, and this is the case that's, for some reason, one reason or another, I won't delete this yet, but for some reason, when, at least in textbook valuations, you assume that dividends will grow at a constant rate. So you assume that the dividend today will not be the same thing as the dividend next quarter. Dividends are typically paid quarterly. So for that problem, we have to figure out the dividend growth rate. And this is something that's given. Okay, this is something that, well, I'm sure I could think of a problem where it's not given. But for all intents and purposes, it's going to be given as G. G is the growth rate. And it's going to be a constant growth rate. So D2 equals D1 times 1 plus G. D76 equals D75 times 1 plus G. This is what I mean when I say it's a constant growth rate. Taylor?
Couldn't you just put that as like d to the t equals d to the t minus 1 times 1 plus g, because it's just the time period right before it?
Yes, yes. So if I were to write the general case, I would write exactly what you said. D, the dividend at time t equals the dividend at time t minus 1 times 1 plus g. Okay? These are special cases. This is the general case. Okay? Are we clear on what this means? At any point, knowing last period's dividends, I can tell you this period's dividends. At any point, knowing this period's dividends, I can tell you next period's dividends. Make sense? So,
But I thought dividends are, no.
sorry?
I thought dividends aren't, no.
They're not. And that's the problem with this model. But in valuation, well, it's one of the problems with this model. In valuation, we assume that dividends are going to be constant. And so this is a key critical assumption here. Okay? So the beautiful thing about this model is that if we can justify this assumption, the value of a company mechanically and mathematically turns out to be a very simple solution. Where in the green case, Elizabeth, I saw that you lamented that I erased this. It wasn't anything important I erased. I just wrote 2 different numbers instead of t and t plus 1. So if you had t and t plus 1. Yeah, no, it's just I rolled the same thing 3 times. Okay, so V0. So if this assumption holds, if we have a constant growth rate, then the value of the company at any point is going to equal tomorrow's dividend, next period's dividend, divided by the required rate of return minus the growth rate. There are two further restrictions that I have to put on this model. Well, actually, we'll just call it one restriction. It's that R is strictly greater than G. Because we can't have a negative value. We can have a negative firm value, but not according to this model. And we can't have a firm value of infinity if R equals G. So, to use this model, you have to strictly assume that the required rate of return is greater than the growth rate. You can justify that assumption pretty easily by saying, if I knew for sure that a company was going to grow in value, and we take dividends to be proportionate to the company's value, if the company's profits were going to continue growing, and its value would continue growing, and my discount rate doesn't take that into account, then I'm using the wrong discount rate. I should just increase my discount rate. Because this rate represents everything you know about the company. And so if you knew the company was going to make $1 million in profit this year, and $2 million in profit next year, and $4 million in profit next year, it's a growth rate of 100%, then you would require that rate in return. Why would you ever require a lower rate in return than you knew the company was going to make? So I'm not too worried about this assumption, but the main reason for this is to make the math hold. Okay? So, do we have everything down that we need down? All right. I'm going to erase, and we're going to do a quick problem. So, problem goes as follows. We bought a stock for $50 today. We entered into forward contract. We haven't talked about derivatives. You don't have to know everything about this, but forward contract just makes sense intuitively. To sell stock for $52, 1 year, let's do 1.5 year from now. Okay? Dividends grow at constant rate of, give me a number. 3. So predictable. Percent per year. Okay? And what's the last piece of information I need to value this company? What's that? Actually, let's leave it at that. Never mind. So,
The inflation rate?
Actually, yeah, you're right. I need 2 pieces of information. Required rate of return. We're ignoring inflation rate. Well, required rate of return is going to include inflation. So it can be very understandable. So required rate of return. What's a good required rate of return for this firm? No, can't do that. What is it? 8%. 8%? Cool. Required.
He knows.
And let's go last period's dividend was $2.50. Okay. We have several different questions that we could ask here. For now, I'm going to ask you not to pay attention to why we paid $50 for this stock. There could be a whole lot of reasons here. But so, bless you.
Thank you.
So let's draw a cash flow timeline. Okay, we know that at the end we'll get $52, But we also know we're gonna be getting 6 dividends. Sorry. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. 6 periods because we get quarterly dividends. Assume quarterly dividends unless otherwise specified. Assume, yeah. This is not as regular as bonds, paying semi-annual payments, but it still is pretty regular. It's the norm and not the
So
exception.
4 times a year?
4 times a year, yes. So, if our growth rate, if our dividend growth rate is 3% annually, let me ask you, what is our quarterly dividend growth rate?
By 4, divide 3% by 4.
0.75, 3/4. Okay? So, in green starts our analysis. So therefore, you guys all familiar with logic symbols? 3 dots means therefore. Oh, now you are.
You said 1 year from now?
1.5 year from now, we're going to sell it.
Okay.
Whatever that says.
Yeah, we, yeah.
So which one?
The periods, I guess, yeah, there we go, and right there on the 2.5, yeah, down there. Last dividend,
You know it's there.
yeah, but I'm trying to see it on
That's
here.
between her and her camera. Alright, I'll acquiesce.
I
So,
can't see it on the,
if last period's dividend was $2.50, what is my dividend? I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep you guys a couple minutes late. What is, well, anyone who wants to go is free to go. But what is my dividend this period? Time equals 0. What?
0 because you just bought it?
Yes, so that's the assumption. We'll return to that in a second, but just what is the number of the dividend that the company pays today? If the dividend was $2.50 last period, what's gonna be, what is it?
That's the growth rate.
Yes.
Which is
Point, yes.
0.75.
So times 1 plus 0,
0.07.
yeah. So let's do that real quick. So.
251.
I'm so confused.
252. Who said they're so confused?
Me,
Is the camera confused or are you confused?
I'm confused.
You're confused. All right, let's talk to you. So, last period's dividend was $2.50. So if we were to go back, this is time 0. If we were to go back to time -1, we would find this. Okay? To get to this period's dividend, we multiply the last period's dividend times the constant growth rate. All right? Oh, I forgot to write this. So therefore, the periodic growth rate equals 0.75%. Okay? So we multiply this number times 1 plus that number to give us, I'm not going to round here because we're going to need these numbers, so 2.51875. Now, Fabian got to 2 other assumptions that we will always be making in these cases. All right? If I buy a stock today, that means it just paid a dividend a second before I bought the stock. And I did not get today's dividend. And when I sell the stock at this period, I'm going to sell the stock 1 second after I received that quarter's dividend. Does that make sense? Okay. So then what do we expect to make at time, or what dividend do we expect at time 1? It's this number.
Times 1.075.
Yes. So do I trust that
0, 0.
you guys know how to get these numbers? We'll calculate the last number here. We'll calculate this number, and I'll let you guys fill in the blanks yourselves.
So you have to do 2 decimals.
It's a percentage, you have to move to this one.
Well, I know. Oh, you're saying that one. The top number?
And 0.75%.
You're calculating more.
Yeah. That's the one.
One
to the
second.
left. It's right there.
Oh, I know that.
So how do we calculate this last period's dividend? We do this dividend times, so 2.51875. Actually, start with the other part if you're typing into your calculator. We need to calculate 2.51875 times 1 plus 0075, or 1.0075 to the 6th power. That's to get us to this last dividend, right? Because to the 1st power, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th power. Okay? But if you're typing it into your calculator, it's easier to start with this. Just raise this to the 6th power and then multiply by that. So 1.0075 raised to the power of 6 times. Okay, so our last dividend is going to be 2.63442. And I trust you guys will be able to get every dividend in between. Okay, so if I were to ask you how much money we have taken in over this time, you would give me just the sum of these raw numbers. Okay? If I instead ask you what is the net present value of our dividend stream, you would take each of these numbers, as we talked about when we had the equation on the board, and you would discount them. There's a convenient way of doing that. You can say the net present value of just that stream, so future value is going to be nothing. So 0 for future value. Scratch that. Never mind. I will not ask you either of these because it's not going to work with the net present value calculator because we have a growth rate. But I will not ask you how much that stream of dividends is worth. But this is how you find out each of these dividend payments. Okay? Now we want to ask the question: how much is the stock worth once we sold it? Okay, we sold it for $52, but that's not necessarily how much the stock is worth. So how do you figure out how much the stock is worth once you sold it? So you take the present value at time equals 6, because that's when we're selling it. How do we come up with this?
That value over 8% minus 3%.
Who agrees?
I do.
Good choice. Who disagrees? I do.
You do?
Yes.
No, I don't disagree.
So this is the dividend at period 6. In case I didn't make that clear. In order to use the formula, we need to take the dividend at the next period. So we need to take the dividend at the period 7. So times 1.0075. Close, yeah. You got the right formula. But this divided by that. And so let's come up with a value there. So this stock is worth $53.08. Okay? One question I could ask you is, how much money did you make on this transaction? I would have to specify. The value that you got would be the difference between what you paid for it, I'm sorry, what you're selling it for, and what you could have sold it for. Okay? So you lost value by agreeing to buy the stock for $52. You could have actually sold it on the open market for $53.08. But instead, you foolishly sold it for $52. I could ask you different variations of this. I can play with this number, I can play with all these numbers. But the concept remains the same. You would figure out what the growth rate is, and You would plug it into this formula and figure out what the next period's dividend is, and you would get what you could have sold it for. The most I'm gonna ask you is the sum of these, cash flows. Okay.
So the expo on that last one, is it work conversely with, as you go down that time?
Say that one more time, Jim?
So like this exponent, as you go down here.
No, it actually goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6. Yeah. So this is the last period. If I want to know.
When would you calculate that at this point in time, or would you calculate that down the road?
Yeah, this was the date that we started with today. So we're either.
Okay. Now I started something up. I'm still looking for an appointment.
Why did you have to multiply by 1.75?
Because inflation are present value at any time, or times 0, equals the dividend at the next date, divided by, So this is a really common mistake that was made in intro to finance class is people put this as today's dividend.
But it's always one up.
Yes. It's the mathematical net present value of an income from subsidies.